Well, I'd like to welcome my guest to the news review out of Ontario. We have political commentator Jason Unruhe, and out of London, Said Mohsen Abbas, journalist and political commentator. I'd like to welcome both of them to the program. Starting it off now in Ontario with Jason. Well, what do you make of this? Now, we know that the Kurds actually, Kurdish and Arab fighters have actually been eliminating right now. We're down to the last remnants of Daesh, but it's the United States that's now all of a sudden trying to take credit for this situation. Your take on what's going on?
Well, I mean, the United States can take some credit. They did send a significant amount of weapons and intelligence to Kurdish forces. While these may not be directly related to the SDF, etc., sometimes the lines between the two are certainly blurry. But I think it's fairly obvious that the SDF is the one who actually did the fighting. It is very strange for the U.S. to claim that they are the ones who did it. They certainly did not. And there is some degree of helping them out, I understand. But the United States cannot take credit for the actual fight. Most of the fighting was actually done by Russian and Syrian forces, actual government troops. They're the ones that bore the brunt of the fighting basically throughout this entire war, while the United States was funding and sending weapons to the rebel groups and coming up with new accusations all the time against the Syrian government, particularly accusations of having used chemical weapons, which have now been refuted by the OPCW. It's very interesting that the U.S. is trying to take credit in this situation for the defeat of Daesh when they were they're mainly responsible for the entire situation having been created to begin with, particularly with regards to the al-Nusra Front, etc., creating the chaos that Daesh ended up joining. So it's very strange, I mean, and not beyond the U.S. to try to take credit for things that they weren't responsible for. But in the end, it is terribly hypocritical for the U.S. to claim credit when they are basically responsible for the entire chaos inside the country.
Well, Said Mohsen Abbas, your take. I mean, you're a journalist, and we know sometimes in dealing with journalism how different things can be portrayed in perhaps ways they aren't, and we see mainstream media actually getting on this. Your take on all of this, I mean, what is next in this strange game? Because as our guest there in Ontario was saying, that of course the United States played a big role in the creation of these terrorist groups, and did not, many would say, especially those who were in charge of forces in Iraq and Syria, that there were situations that the United States could actually, even before this got out of hand, could have easily wiped out Daesh, but refused to do so. And now we have them making these big claims. So your take on exactly what's going on?
Well, of course, these are all part of the psychological operations for the next phase of conflict and the continued efforts to balkanize the Middle East. And they've given you a hint in every report that I've seen from Western media. There's a constant emphasis on how Daesh, while apparently they've just been destroyed by the US, which was actually their premier supporter on a covert level, they actually are saying that they are sleeper cells which will continue to operate, and perhaps that's the obvious next phase, that they are trying to distance themselves from any connection with ISIS for international media and propaganda purposes. But actually what they're going to do is to continue to fund and reorganize and regroup those sleeper cells who've gone underground. Of course, the other thing that we have evidence for firmly is that, and particularly Russian intelligence has told us very clearly that many of these battle-hardened Daesh members have now gone off to Afghanistan, where they're creating new forms of chaos. So Pakistan and Afghanistan also. So I don't think we can believe what we see on the surface, and certainly the United States isn't responsible for the victory over Daesh. In fact, I would say that the United States was busy bombing and attacking Syrian forces that wanted to clear up Daesh long ago, and they would have done far earlier in the west of Syria, had it not, or sorry, the east of Syria, had it not been for American protection of ISIS. Furthermore, if you look at Raqqa, why didn't they do their shock and awe, which they exacted on Saddam Hussein, etc., with all of their Tomahawks and cruise missiles? What took them so long to do it to Raqqa, where they established the base for ISIS?
Well, Jason, what's your take on that? Is it that the United States basically just wants a chaotic situation to continue? As our guest there in London said, do you think the next stage of all this is, as we're seeing in mainstream media, are these sleeper cells that unfortunately perhaps will start attacking in various ways? Your assessment of it all?
Well, I would tend to agree that that's probably the next phase that the United States is going to use to continue justifying having forces or having U.S.-backed forces inside of the country. You know, already we've seen a tremendous flip-flop on what was going to happen to U.S. troops already in the country right now. Trump said that all 2,000 would be pulled out once Daesh had been defeated, yet now we have the Pentagon saying that 1,000 will be staying inside the country for what they're going to say are cleanup efforts. It seems very likely that if Daesh had really been defeated and really gone, and this was the objective situation, I don't think the U.S. troops would have remained in there. I think that definitely there's another objective here. The United States is trying to continue this chaos that they are definitely profiting from. I mean, it's no secret that the Kurds inside the country have been used as a proxy force for the United States to capture very important areas and have committed essentially what are crimes against humanity, kicking Arabs out of their homes, declaring themselves rulers over certain kinds of land. But the United States needs a continuing justification for backing up those Kurds inside the country who have been encircling many very resource-rich areas, which are no doubt going to be handed over to the United States itself. So some kind of continuing chaos, maybe sporadic bouts of violence that fighters who had gone underground would, the kind that they would carry out, would be just that justification.
Well, Said Mohsen, your take then, the opposite side of the spectrum, we'll talk about the line of resistance then. What should they be prepared for? And you talked about possible sleeper cells. But in your perspective, what needs to be done on that side of things?
I think the US needs to be told to leave Iraq. They need to be pushed out of any kind of bases they have in that region, number one. So the Iraqi establishment, who recently welcomed President Rouhani and reaffirmed their strong alliance with Iran, needs to go gradually one step further. Of course, they have to be strong and really internally very powerful to do that. The same, of course, goes for Syria and the Kurds in general. You cannot trust United States intentions in that region. What are they doing there anyway? They're not a regional power. So why on earth are they justifying any kind of placement? So that's one. The second is that internally, what caused the fissure and the rise of ISIS was a lax security, a poor security mechanism, certainly in Iraq, which needs to be corrected. Of course, the rise of Hashd al-Shahabi came as a result of Ayatollah Sistani. So again, I think the religious clerics will play a massive role in directing the people of Iraq and Syria to act in a sort of robust way. And I think corruption needs to be tackled within the ranks of certainly those powers there in order for Daesh and the US not to exploit and to be able to carry out more of these operations. I think security is the biggest thing that needs to be done, i.e. tightening it all up. And of course, also to break the infrastructures of Mossad and the various other intelligence services of the CIA, etc., who will be supporting fully these operations by the Daesh sleeper cells.
And on that note, I appreciate both of you being with us. Jason Unruhe, political commentator out of Ontario, and Said Mohsen Abbas, journalist and political commentator out of London. And viewers, we appreciate you being with us.